sort of environments, institutions, you know, from primary onwards. And Bob, you focus on FE, don't you?
Yeah, thanks. Good morning, and good morning to the Oxford Brookes post-compulsory PGCE students, and welcome. And I admire and recognise your commitment to a very important area of work. I've spent most, as Claire knows, I've spent most of my working life and working in further education. I started in secondary schools and then went into further education. Ended up as a principal, and in recent years, I'm now chair of governors of an outstanding college in the north. I'm also vice chair of governors of a secondary modern school here in Trafford. But the last 10 or 12 years, I've had one foot in the education world. As you know, I worked on the Feltag and the E-Tag with ministers. But I also have a foot in the world of the technology industry because I'm the education advisor for Toshiba Information Systems Northern Europe. But relax, students, relax. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I've been with Toshiba for nearly 15 years yet, and I have yet to sell a device. So don't worry, this is not an advert. I'm pleased that you're interested in Feltag. I hope what I share with you will give you the context and the history of Feltag and why it's important that you bring your skills and expertise and develop your skills and expertise to take advantage of technology, so that you can bring further education and adult education to more and more people in a better way that's more relevant to their present and future lives. And that's really the premise upon which Feltag was based.
Okay, so Bob, could you tell us, what is Feltag?
Okay, Feltag stands for the acronym. You know what education is like for acronyms. The Further Education Learning Technologies Action Group, and that's a really important point. That the A in it was about action. And just a very quick bit of background, and I'm sure Claire can edit this down. And I'm really sorry I can't be with you live tomorrow, but sadly I've got to go to the funeral of my good friend and colleague Peter Roberts, who CBE, who was just retired as the principal of Leeds City College, and they were one of the pioneers at Leeds City College. I've been working with them since Peter's been there about 6 years ago. Sadly, he just retired and died on New Year's Eve. But Leeds City College have been really pioneering in the use of technology to extend and enhance learning. And where it came from was the then FE and Skills Minister was a guy called Matthew Hancock, who's now in the Cabinet Office. And whilst my personal political values absolutely clash with, Tory rich boy horse riding Norfolk set, I have to say, having worked in FE and adult for most of my life, he is the one FE and Skills Minister who has actually understood the potential of digital technology and how that can extend and engage more and enhance learning and assessment. And he actually got it. And to some extent, despite our different, backgrounds, him coming from where he came from and me coming from a council house estate in Rochdale, we both agreed that the FE sector was slipping further and further behind in terms of its investment, not only in the infrastructure, but also, more importantly, in the workforce skills. And it was lacking leadership and vision. It was lacking governors who knew what the future of education and learning would be looking like. And therefore, it had failed to adapt to the changes that were happening both in schools, in universities, in the workplace, and as you and I now, Claire, as what we're doing, using technology. This is a Google Hangout that you've set up this morning, using technology to improve our own learning. So there was a chasm that was getting bigger, in my view, between what further education, the infrastructure and the vision and the leadership and the workforce skills that further education needed in order to stay in touch with, let alone ahead of, the changes in industry and employment and social life, And the real, delicious irony in all this is that he followed me on Twitter, and as you do and many others do, and I learn from other people on Twitter. Twitter's been probably the best CPD tool I've ever had in 40 years in education and training. And he followed me on Twitter, and I was sat at home one Sunday night about 3 years ago watching Downton Abbey with my wife, and I got a direct message from the minister, and basically just said, I agree with everything you said, because I'd written 2 or 3 absolutely scathing articles in FE Week and the Times Educational Supplement that basically was lambasting the money that had been wasted by LSIS, by the government, by Vector, that's supposed to have been helping FE adapt in an agile way to the changes. But the reality, Claire, was, the last research that was done about the capacity and capability in the further education sector to use technology effectively, that was done in 2012 by the Association of Colleges, showed us that less than 30% of colleges, and I know FE is not just about colleges, but it's a big chunk, that 30% of FE colleges were only 30% were using technology effectively, and therefore the 70% that weren't using it effectively were damaging not only the future opportunities but the policy aims of the government. So, he invited me down to Westminster. He said, "I've no money, so don't, this is not." And I said, "It's, in the conversation I had with him, was this is not about money. This is about culture. It's about attitude. It's about leadership. It's about governance. It's about vision. It's about the barriers, the cultural barriers that are embedded within the system that are stopping teachers from innovating with the use of technology." And they include the regulation, Ofsted, the assessment systems, all those cultural inhibitors actually impede teachers who I've worked with and lived with and married and remarried and got kids who are teachers. Teachers want to try and innovate, but if they are in a claustrophobic, introverted world that's focusing on the wrong things, then it's very difficult for them to do that. It's very difficult for them to do that if they don't have their reliable infrastructure. It's very difficult to do that when they're driven by targets that don't align with the use of technology. So for all those reasons, that's why Feltag was set up. The original A in Feltag, interestingly, was the Further Education Learning Technologies Advisory Board. And Hancock was very unequivocal about this. He said, "No, I don't need advice. What I need is action." And therefore, if all the PGC students at Oxford Brookes have had the opportunity to look at Feltag, you will see the recommendations are all about removing cultural inhibitors. They're about, well, there are the 6 strands, which, we can go through, and they're all about how, and I use nudge theory with the politicians, that how could we either nudge things or remove some barriers. So, for example, if one of the drivers, and having been a principal, I know what the drivers are that keep principals awake at night, and now I'm a chair of governors and I know what the drivers are. We are concerned about whether, first of all, the finances, secondly, the inspections, Ofsted inspections, thirdly, the audit reports, etc., etc. Those are the key drivers. Now, if those key drivers aren't supportive of the use of digital technologies for learning. So, for example, if the Skills Funding Agency has a mindset that it's funding learning and you have to be present in a classroom with a teacher before it'll even consider, funding that, then that's a restrictive mindset, because as you and I know, and as your students now, as we speak, will be experiencing, actually, I don't have to be in the same room as the learners in order to try and stimulate and encourage learning. So if your students look at the Feltag recommendations, you'll see it's about leadership and vision. What do we need to do? It's about workforce skills. And I have to say, this is absolutely complementary to what you're doing, and I'm grateful that you are focusing on Feltag in your PGCE group, because people like your students coming into the sector have a really, really critical role in challenging the current, often analog mindset of the leadership in the senior management and the middle management. And I think, one of the great, looking back now onto my time, many, many years ago, I mean, I'm 65 now, so when I started teaching in the mid-1970s, one of the great things about coming in with different perspectives is you can challenge the way things happen. So when your boss says to you, oh, we always do it like this, then I think it's incumbent on people coming into the profession to say, well, why? Because now we've got this thing called Google Hangouts, or now we've got this thing called Google Docs, or now we've got this thing called Skype, or now we've got these things called MOOCs, or now we've got this thing called blended learning. Why aren't we doing this? Because I think that it's really, really important that those questions are asked. Otherwise, and I'm going to stop now because I've been rambling I know for a long time. Otherwise, the key words in the Feltag report is about the aim of Feltag is to support the agile evolution of the FE sector. Now, I don't think when it comes to technology, if we look back over the last 5 years, one, we've not been that agile, and two, I don't think we've evolved enough in terms of the use of digital technology. End of ramble.
And a wonderful ramble it was too. I've been making notes whilst you've been talking. There's some really key things that you've been bringing out. What do you feel is the key role of FE lecturers in implementing this Feltag? What can they do apart from asking that why question? Pragmatically, what can they do?
Well, there's lots of things they can do pragmatically. For example, if I was your students, if I was sat where they're sat now, and if I was you as a tutor, the one thing that I would do is I'd enroll on the University for Industry free online CPD program. If they go to www.ufi.co.uk, they'll see there's a free course, online course called Essentials of Blended Learning, Part 1. Now, that started in November of last year. But it's repeated, it'll be repeated again and again. And actually, the Essentials of Blended Learning Part 2 starts in February of this year. So the first thing that they could do, and I suggest, well, why wouldn't you want to take advantage of free CPD? That's the first thing I'll do. The second thing I would do is I would join Twitter and I would search out people like Claire Fenwick, people like Seb Schmoller, people like, all the FE people. There's a whole list. There's a thing that happens every Thursday night on Twitter called UK FE Chat. There's a whole host of things that you can get from your own community. The third thing that I would do if I was a student and a teacher or a teacher in there now, I would look at the ALT website, the Association for Learning Technology. I've been a member of ALT for probably 15 years now. I'm one of their FE ambassadors. I've been to their conferences. I think you have as well, Claire. It's a great community, and there's an enormous amount that you can learn from that. But in terms of what they can actually do within their classroom, there's an awful lot of, a lot of people say, well, you would say that you work for a technology company and it's very expensive and rubbish. There's lots of free stuff out there with the stuff that you've already got. Okay, it really does need a reliable infrastructure in terms of Wi-Fi, in terms of your learning platform, depending upon what the learning platform. I mean, for the life of me, I don't know why FE providers and schools aren't just all moving to Google Docs. To be honest, it's free, it's available. It allows you to use tools like this and so on. But anyway, that's another story. So I think there's lots of things teachers can do, and importantly, I mean, there's lots of FE providers that are now doing a lot more work since Feltag. Feltag, would you believe this, Claire? It shows you how old we are getting. Feltag, initially, the work was done 3 years ago. Feltag reported 2 years ago this next month, and the government recommendations came out, the government acceptance of the report and all the recommendations came out 18 months ago. So 18 months have gone by where those FE providers who have grasped the spirit of Feltag and tried to embed it within their institutions, I think will not only survive what's coming up over the next few years, because it's going to be very challenging. I think those FE providers that have embedded the spirit of Feltag in their whole culture, or trying to, will not only survive, they will actually thrive, because it's very clear from what Nick Bowles and these area-based reviews are saying, is that we're heading for, and I'm absolutely fully supportive of this. And I'll share with you just a personal anecdote to demonstrate it. I was sharing with you before we started this conversation about my mum, who lives in Rochdale, and I live in Manchester, and she died last summer, and I went every day during June, July, August, September. I drove from Manchester to see my mum in Rochdale, who incidentally lived the last 18 months of her life through an iPad in her bedroom and a Wi-Fi. She never knew she had Wi-Fi because we put it in when she was in the hospice. But every day I drove past, first of all, Rochdale Sixth Form College, which was built 3 years ago with £23 million of public money, which has 7 stories, a big multi-story block. And 150 yards further down on the same plot of land is Rochdale Technical College. It's now called Hopwood Hall. And they have another campus out in Middleton on the old De La Salle teacher training site. Now, what's this got to do with Feltag? It's got everything to do with Feltag. Because during the months of June, July, August and September, and the middle of September, both of those buildings, 7 stories high, the Sixth Form College and the Hopwood Hall College, just had 4 million spent recladding the outside, were empty 100% of the time. So all that resource, all that equipment, all that expertise was laying idle when, you know, the students of Lancashire and Rochdale and around are desperate for the need of further skills. Now, Feltag is about taking the asset base, about nudging the sector to take the asset base, which is currently locked in the analog mindset of learning has to be in a building with people sat in rows in a classroom with a teacher at the front with an interactive whiteboard. Quite frankly, Claire, that needs to be put in the past. And if you think about it, historically, you can understand why it's designed like that, because FE was born out of, let's be clear about this, not without need to get too political, it wasn't born out of employers saying, oh, we need more training. It wasn't born out of a government saying, oh, we need the workforce to be better educated. The roots of further and adult education are firmly grounded in the work of trade unions and individual people who said we want to better ourselves. But it came out of a time when it was in the Industrial Revolution. So the whole mindset for the design of the asset base and the design of the learning programs currently funded by the SFA are predicated on a mindset that's an industrial mindset. And my thesis is, and the work that I've been doing in the last 5 years, it has been entirely based on we need to change that mindset and move to a paradigm where learning will be supported by the best digital technology and the more skilled teachers in the best possible way and the most effective and efficient way. And that doesn't mean sitting in rows in a 7-story block in between September and May and then sitting in a big hall and being tested. I'm afraid that mindset needs condemning to the past and a new mindset. But how we change that is very much a political thing. And, you know, I'm working on that. I'm working with ministers and working with governors. I think it's also important that your teachers and other teachers are also agents for change by, from the bottom up, asking those questions about, can't we do this in a different way? Can't we do, isn't there a better way of doing this? And without getting into flipped learning and blended learning and MOOCs and everything like that, I think at the very least, teachers should be asking questions as well as trying to develop their own knowledge, skills and understanding. And that's another very, very long ramble. I apologise for.
Thank you very much. I was about to say, well, what about these MOOCs? There's large attrition rates on MOOCs. Something like only 2% of people who sign up for MOOCs end up there. So where is this digital stuff going to? I worked on a project where we were supposed to have online learning. This was an OU project. We couldn't get teachers engaged in it. But you've actually answered that question, because it's not just about those big things. It's about the little things that I think that the teachers in FE can do.
Yeah, I said, let me just pick up on the MOOCs point, because I think it's really important. And I think to some extent, the question reinforces my point about paradigms. You mentioned, a 2% retention rate and everything like that. Now, I've participated in 4 MOOCs. I've enrolled in 4 MOOCs. I have yet to finish. I've not finished any of them. However, I've learned an awful lot, and I've learned an awful lot whilst I was in. And I didn't want to do the whole thing, because some of the learning in that wasn't relevant to what I needed or wanted. My wife's the same. My wife's done 3 or 4 MOOCs now. She has completed one, and she got a certificate from MIT, I think, something like that. But the other 3 she didn't complete. I think it is about a mindset thing. Perhaps what we need to do is reframe the way we think about learning. Because there's still this mindset that a course is something you start, then you're assessed, and then you finish, and then you go out with a certificate. Now, whilst I understand what you're saying about 2% retention, I think it's going up a bit actually now. And I think the MOOC that the UFI Trust that I've referred to, that I suggest your students have a look at, we've engaged 15,000 FE teachers signed up for that started in November. Now, as yet, it's not finished, so we don't know what the completion rate is. But I know it's going to be much higher than 2%. The next level 2 starts in February. I know already we've got 3,000 of the 15,000 that have signed up for the Essentials of Blended Learning Part 2. My challenge back to you is, perhaps it's 2% of 500,000 people is still an awful lot of people. 10% of 200,000 people on, let's say, some of the MOOCs coming out of MIT, is still an awful lot of people. My worry about MOOCs is that it's people like me and you that do it. It's people like me and you that are already educated, can already use the technology. My view is, let's take the lessons from MOOCs. MOOCs aren't the answer. MOOCs per se are not going to solve the world of further or higher education. But there are some really key learning points that MOOCs can teach us about learning design, about accessibility, about assessment, about the workforce skills that are needed to support learning online in these places. And I think you're right, teachers are reluctant to take up MOOCs or even deliver MOOCs, because I think they are concerned that the technology will replace them as teachers. But let's be very, very clear about that. And I think this is particularly true about FE and Feltag. Let me bring it back to Feltag. In our view, and the minister's view at the time of Feltag, now, I'm not saying this view has seeped down to all the principals or the governors or even some of the politicians now in place, or even the civil servants in this BIS and the Skills Funding Agency. But I'm very clear, because I sat in the very early meeting with the minister. The view was, and still should be, and the key message is, investment in technology is not cheap. It's not a cheap option. E-learning, blended learning, they're not cheap. They take investment. However, if we get it right and get the learning design right and the teachers with the workforce skills right, it will lead to need for more teachers, but who work in a different way. So instead of having teachers driving to Rochdale Sixth Form College and Rochdale College and sitting in a room from 9 o'clock till 4 o'clock, we might have to have a workforce that works in a completely different way. So my view is investment in technology doesn't mean less teachers. In fact, we probably need more teachers, but teachers who will work in a different way. So let's sell off some of the underused land and buildings. Let's reinvest that money in digital infrastructure, and let's reinvest that money in workforce development that will allow us to take real advantage of the opportunities that technology, instead of trying to force technology into our existing paradigms of further and adult education. Forcing new technology into an old pedagogy is doomed to fail.
It's as if you have seen my planning, Bob. You bring up Twitter, you bring up the need for emerging pedagogies and the fact that actually this is not going to be cheap. It's not a money-saving venture.
No. And I think those FE providers and principals who, I mean, I would, you know, the idea, I mean, and this is, let me just say this, one of the things that grabbed all the headlines with Feltag, Claire, was the whole percentage issue. Can you remember? Oh, we've got to have 10%, we've got to have 20%, that was a massive red herring, that, but it was a deliberate red herring. When we sat, well, some of us sat in the very room where I'm sitting now at home, you know, thinking about and planning the whole strategy for the implementation of Feltag. You know, as a principal, I'd probably get 8 or 10 various reports coming across my desk every day. And, you know, the way that I would handle it and the way my secretary would put a little piece of paper on the top with a paper clip and it'd say circulation list. And then I'd read it and then I'd tick who should go to next. And then about 2 months later, it'd end up back on my desk with everybody had ticked it. Now, that's what we didn't want Feltag to be. Another report that gathered dust had no impact. That's why it was called an action group, not an advisory group. So we decided we weren't going to publish it hard copy, and you won't get a hard copy. The only hard copy you'll ever get is if people have printed it off. So we made people go online to look at it. But the other thing is, when we decided, you know, how we were going to launch it, again, we launched it by Matthew Hancock Skyping in to a conference up here in Manchester where we were launching the Feltag. Now, he wanted to come up, and I said, no, I don't want you to come up. No, I want you to Skype in because the message is in the medium. So the percentage issue was a massive red herring we used to hook both the media and to hook both the principals. In other words, if they thought their funding was going to be dependent on them having 10% online or 20% online, with an aim that by 2018 it would be 50% online, I knew it wouldn't be one of those circulation list reports and people would grab attention. And it did, and it worked. However, you know, because some of them, you know, misunderstood it, and it was clarified later. You know, some of them, some idiots, some of the principals, I mean, it beggars belief, doesn't it? Sent emails round to say that every lesson had to have 10% online, and the quality assurance team will be coming round checking. Well, that was never the intention. That you know, that was the hideous interpretation of it. But at least it grabbed the attention. So this is it's about direction of travel. It's about removing the cultural inhibitors. It's about liberating teachers to innovate. It's about having long-term vision. It's also about, I have to say, one of the other themes, getting the students to use their own technologies and liberating the students. Because my argument, and you've heard me make this many times at Better and other places, we've spent too much money and time investing in technology for teaching rather than technology for learning. We've replaced chalkboards with interactive whiteboards. We've replaced filing cabinets with Moodle and Blackboard. And look at the VLEs that most educational institutions, and look what they're full of. They're full of shite. They're full of old handouts, PowerPoint presentations, and everything like that. So, what Feltag is about trying to challenge the current mindset to focus on the use of technology for learning, not technology for teaching. I'm lost now. I don't know I can't remember the question that you asked.
I can't remember the question, but those were great answers. Oh yeah, because you came up to that 10% thing. So it's not about every lesson having to have 10% online. So how would you see, does that mean that all the courses have to have 10% or?
No, absolutely not. As a professional educator, having spent my life, I think it's my decision. As a teacher, it's my decision as to what's the best learning for the learners that I've got in front of me. Now then, it may be that there are a program that I'm working on, or a bunch of learners that I'm working on, that actually 100% online. For example, and this is just an example, if it's a higher level 4 or 5 professional qualification, high level technique, etc., then it's quite possible that it could be up near the 80-90% online. And then when we do bring people together face to face, then we make the best use of the online learning that's already happened. It could be that if it's another group of learners, there'll be no online learning, because let's say it could be a really foundation level program, or that they need a lot of face-to-face learning before we can then help them to develop the skills to go online. It could be that with the use of assistive technology, some of the special needs program could be 50-50. The blend, I would suggest to you, is my decision, along with the learners. And as a professional educator, this program can be adapted to blended learning. This program can do it 100%, this can do it 80%, this can do it 50%, this can do it 10%, this can do it. So that's the mindset behind Feltag. It's a professional educator's decision. The challenge we've got is our funding methodology is not based on that. Our funding methodology is still predicated on an analog mindset that says learning takes place when a group of people sit down in a room or stand up in a room, take a register, there's another teacher there, it goes from this time to this time, and then they leave, and then they repeat that over 36 weeks, and then we test them, and then we kick them out whether they've got it or they haven't got it. Now, my view is that's just not appropriate anymore for the world that we are in, let alone the world that we're going into.
Excellent, thank you. I was just thinking, oh, you're giving me all the answers that I hoped you'd give, because I was at that presentation where the minister Skyped in, and that was exactly what he was saying. He pulled up that 10% issue, and the first questions that came out was, well, I can't have 10% on my program because, and he really reiterated that, explained that, and you've reiterated it. Okay, so
I'm not sure, incidentally, I'm not sure that your students will come across such an enlightened view with the middle management and the senior management in their institutions. But let me tell you, that's where I think their role is in terms of change agents. They should be challenging. If I'm working hard and you're working hard at the various levels that you work at to challenge the mindset, they have a duty and responsibility as innovators, of change agents, to challenge from the grassroots level as well. And I think between the two of us, then we can squeeze the middle.
Okay, so where do you, from your experience of FE colleges at the moment, where do you think Feltag is sitting? Is it where it should be? Do we need to work harder on it?
I think we need to work harder on it. What I'm seeing, and your students will know if you look at the context, and the bigger context is there's a massive rationalisation programme going on. It's very clear that Biz and the Minister want to see less FE colleges. Doesn't mean to say less learners, means less FE colleges and a better use of the resources that they've got. Now, I can't disagree with that. You know, I actually think if we get rid of some land and buildings, we can have more teachers and more learners, but they'll just be engaged in a different way. So, you know, I think there are some pioneers. I've just over Christmas, I've just done the shortlisting for the Times FE Awards, most innovative use of technology for teaching and learning, and I did the judging last year, and I've done it again this year, and there's a significant improvement this year, one in the number of people that are applying, and two about, you know, last year it was all about this little project or this little course or this. Now the application and the 8 that have been shortlisted will be announced soon by the Times Ed FE supplement. All 8 of them are really, you know, applying for the award because they are embedding technology across the whole institution. You know, and it's not technology for the MIS or for data management or for technology for teaching and learning. That was one of the criteria that I changed as a judge this year. Last year it was the use of technology per se. This year I changed it to the use of technology, for innovative use of technology for teaching, learning, assessment. So I think that I see there's a significant shift culturally what's going on. However, I think that's still, you know, if we were to do the normal curve of distribution, and I know you'll have done that with the students will have done that on their statistics bit of the course. You know, I think we're still the great bulk of FE, and think about the private training providers as well, not just colleges. I think the great bulk of them still have a lot more to do with Feltag. What I'm pleased about is that these area-based reviews, which some of your students will know about, and I know you know about, where look, there's wave 1, which is Sheffield and Manchester, and this is all tied in with the devolution agenda. What I do know is that the area-based review steering groups are asking very, very serious questions, and I'm on the National Advisory Group for that, and I'm making sure that those questions are being asked when we're talking about collaborations and, you know, mergers and closures. The key questions need to be asked about, you know, the effective use of digital technology, one, to support the new institutions and the way that they will work, but also the challenges to the mindset of, well, you know, can we deliver learning and support learning and assess learning in a different way using technology more effectively? So I think there are some pioneers. I think there are more and more people signing up, and I'll say this, and, you know, I don't know how long we've been going now, probably too long, and you'll have to edit this down, but I'll say this: those FE providers who embed the spirit of Feltag, the spirit, you know, read through it, look at the spirit of Feltag, and recognise the direction of travel, those governors and principals and middle management, senior management, and lecturers and teachers and support staff who grasp the spirit of Feltag, as I say, will not only survive but thrive. And those that don't, won't. And that's what evolution is all about. Agile evolution is those organizations, those species that quickly adapt to the changes in their environment are much more likely to survive than those who ignore, who carry on doing things in exactly the same way but expect to get different results. I mean, that's just insanity, isn't it?
Well, I certainly think so. So from what you're saying, you're pretty much saying if you don't kind of embrace technology and find your way through it, that, you know, your job is more likely to be at risk than if you use technology effectively in your teaching.
Absolutely, 100%. Fundamentally, that's it. I'll sort of leave you with this. In my view, technology and computers will never ever replace effective teachers. Never. However, teachers who use technology effectively will replace those who don't.